The Saudi Arabian Golf Federation has the same vision that we have.
A lot of people see me, Big Boy Pants Golf, as this golf YouTuber, over 3,000 subscribers, and I woke up this morning and read this Golf Digest title and realized this is when things get real stupid. The night before was a blood moon, and this title states that the PGA Tour countersues LIV Golf over anti-competitive behavior, alleges Mickelson and DeChambeau recruited for Saudi-backed circuit. The PGA Tour has fired back against LIV Golf's antitrust lawsuit, countersuing the Saudi-backed circuit in a U.S. district court. In the original antitrust lawsuit filed in August, 11 LIV Golf players alleged that the purpose of their suit was to strike down the PGA Tour's anti-competitive rules and practices that prevent these independent contractor golfers from playing when and where they choose. Yes, there are certain business practices that fall under the umbrella of anti-competitive practices as defined and judged by the FTC, and that's why the term anti-competitive is used. The PGA Tour and its antitrust fight was raised in this article in 1995 titled PGA Outclubs FTC and Antitrust Fight. This article details that there were two reasons that the FTC antitrust lawyers were looking into the PGA Tour's practices. One of the rules forbid golfers to play in a non-PGA event without the commissioner's permission. The other gives similar veto power over appearances on televised golf programs. Together, the provisions enable the PGA to dominate the business side of professional golf, constraining the opportunities of rival promoters. And these two issues still remain today. From this Golf Week article, the PGA Tour states that, moreover, while LIV and the player plaintiffs challenge the Tour's media rights and conflicting events policies as anti-competitive, and as pointed out by the aforementioned LA Times article, the PGA Tour counters that LIV imposes similar, indeed far more restrictive, conditions on its players, and the player plaintiffs have agreed to them. So is what the PGA Tour is saying here is that even though they may be practicing anti-competitive practices, that the LIV Golf Tour is also practicing anti-competitive practices? If anyone is competing unfairly, it is LIV, not the Tour. In a Wednesday night filing, the Tour asserts that the case is not about unfair competition. If anyone is competing unfairly, it is LIV, not the Tour. I'm rubber, you're glue. Ah yes, the oldest legal defense in the book, the I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say bounces off me and goes back to you. Yes, we've all used this in third grade, and the PGA Tour is using it against LIV right now. Now let's look into, is LIV more restrictive than the PGA Tour, or is LIV quote-unquote restrictive like other sports? The PGA Tour claims golfers who join LIV must sign long-term exclusive contracts that require them to participate in all LIV events and prohibit them from playing in any tour events occurring in the same week as any LIV event or any conflicting event whatsoever, reads the counter. So the PGA Tour is saying that its requirement that players get permission slips to go play other tours is just like, or maybe even less worse than the LIV Golf Tour restricting its players to playing 14 tournaments a year as per their contract, and because these players are playing tournaments on the LIV Golf Tour, can't play in PGA tournaments the same week because we don't have human clones. It's apparently still a no-no, though who knows about the Wuhan lab at this point, that these LIV players are likewise being restricted. Yes, that is true that you can't play in one tournament on the LIV Tour and in a PGA tournament the same week because we don't have the multiplicity situation like Michael Keaton in that movie where he was doing tasks like house cleaning and child rearing, or I don't know. I'm a man, so I have no clue what was going on in that movie. Should have been science fiction. But I do not think that this whole idea of the LIV Golf Tour being as restrictive as the PGA Tour, or worse even, is valid at all. But on the subject of multiplicity, how many Rory McIlroys would Jay Monahan make if he could just churn them out? Yes, Dustin Johnson had to sign a long-term exclusive contract, and he is required to participate in all the LIV events. But this is pretty normal for all sports, isn't it? Look at Russell Wilson. He just agreed to a 5-year extension with the Denver Broncos for $245 million. And yes, I'm sure Russell Wilson is expected to play in every game. This is the same with Julio Rodriguez of the Seattle Mariners or Giannis with the Milwaukee Bucks. They get long-term exclusive contracts and they're expected to show up and play. It's astounding that the PGA Tour thinks this is odd. Among the tour's reasoning is that LIV requires players to compete in every event on its schedule, which is pretty much the norm in any sport, that players have surrendered their promotional rights to LIV. This is very similar to what the UFC has done. All fighters are required to wear the brand Venom, that players have requirements to show up to its marketing and sponsor events, which is basically like the Pro-Am for every PGA Tour event. Also, if you win the PIP money, you also incur additional marketing and sponsor events to get the other half of your money. So it's strange that the PGA Tour is pointing at this. Also, the PGA Tour has issues with the fact that players can't respond to interviews or media appearances without LIV's blessings, especially after the DP World Tour, which is now 40% owned by the PGA Tour, went out of its way to give a media blackout to the LIV Golf players that were playing at the BMW PGA Championship at Wentworth. Very much a case, it seems, of projecting and the pot calling the kettle black. Any existing player sponsors also must be introduced to LIV. I don't see how this is relevant, but from the LIV Golf perspective, they might want sponsors to be in accordance with Sharia law. On the topic of being Sharia compliant, last week, Mirae Asset Global Investments launched its first Sharia compliant Asian equities fund. To be in this fund, your company had to be Sharia law compliant. This is also relevant because Mirae Asset owns Titleist and FootJoy, and FootJoy is partnered with the PGA. It all comes full circle. Finally, players must wear LIV branded apparel, which is exactly like NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB. Earth to PGA Tour. Wearing the league's logo is the norm. It's not restrictive. Reading these points that the PGA Tour is putting forth against LIV Golf, I can't help but think of this tweet by LIV Golf enthusiast. Soundbites lacking depth sums up over 90% of the anti-LIV Golf arguments. Hot takes full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Word salad will now be served. The PGA Tour's counter also has, LIV's statements regarding golfer freedom are a thinly veiled public relations ploy concocted to disparage the tour and deflect criticism from LIV's own restrictive business model. This is hilarious because the PGA Tour's countersuit is basically a thinly veiled public relations ploy concocted to disparage the LIV Tour and deflect criticism from the PGA Tour's own restrictive business model. From this Golf Week article, additionally, the tour accuses LIV Golf of a coordinated campaign of ongoing interference with contracts between the tour and players, strictly so LIV can convince a court to alter the tour structure to benefit LIV at the expense of the tour. In terms of interfering with the PGA Tour's contracts and its structure, LIV Golf just offered these players a better deal. And that's what you get when you interfere with a monopoly. The monopoly is unhappy that it is losing power and now has to offer its players a better deal. And we saw that as per the changes that the PGA Tour has made when it suddenly found $100 million to give out. In relation to the second part of that statement, the LA Times article already shows that this situation should have been addressed in 1994, 1995. If the PGA Tour hadn't coerced Congress to pressure the FTC to investigate back then, because there was no investigation, despite the FTC antitrust lawyers' recommendation that one be conducted, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation right now. Indeed, a key component of LIV's strategy has been to intentionally induce tour members to breach their tour agreements and play in LIV events while seeking to maintain their tour memberships and play in marquee tour events like the Players' Championship and the FedEx Cup playoffs so LIV can free ride off the tour and its platform. Again, just like any contract negotiations, if you're not happy with your current employment arrangement and someone offers you a better deal, then maybe you'll breach that original contract, if there was one as an independent contractor, and go play golf on the LIV Tour. The second half of that statement by the PGA Tour lawyers is really more of an issue between the PGA Tour and the players versus the PGA Tour and the LIV Golf Tour. If these players had prior, for example, Dustin Johnson or Phil Mickelson, lifetime memberships, then why can't they play on these events like the Tour Championship, etc.? Cam Smith should be playing next year. We'll see if the PGA Tour now changes its rules or its qualification criteria to specifically focus on excluding members of the LIV Golf Tour. And the last golden nugget of PGA Tour legalese we're going to tackle is, while LIV alleges the tour uses monopoly power and illegally suspended players, the tour's countersuit claims LIV is using players, quote, and the game of golf to sports wash the recent history of Saudi atrocities and to further the Saudi Public Investment Fund's Vision 2030 initiatives. I don't know what kind of lawyers the PGA Tour uses and if any of them have access to YouTube, but if they have access to YouTube, they should have seen this video first for themselves before they decided to push this Saudi 2030 initiative. Let's watch the following video together.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the founding editor of Golf Digest Middle East, Mr. Robbie Greenfield, and his panelists.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this very special panel.
Yes, that's Keith Pelley, the CEO of the then European Tour at the Future Investment Initiative in 2019, the same year the European Tour hosted the Saudi International event.
It's my absolute pleasure and delight to introduce to you the panelists, the esteemed panelists who will be joining me in the discussion and painting a picture for you as to what's going to happen in the world of golf over the course of the next 11, 12 years as we build up to Vision 2030.
So yes, this is the DP World CEO trying to explain how golf will be integral to Saudi Arabia as it pushes forward for its 2030 initiative, even though the DP World Tour is now 40% owned by the PGA Tour, and the PGA Tour is trying to say that the LIV Golf Tour is really just sports washing for this 2030 initiative. The hypocrisy, as Greg Norman keeps saying, is truly deafening.
To my direct left, I'm delighted to introduce Majid Al Saror. He's the CEO of Golf Saudi and the CEO also of the Saudi Golf Federation.
Majid is now the managing director of LIV Golf.
Thank you to the Crown Prince. Thank you to His Excellency, Mr. Yasser Mayan, for allowing us to actually unveil the vision and the progress of golf in Saudi Arabia.
Remember that as per the Scotsman article this past June, Keith Pelley and Jay Monahan had no issues with the Saudi money as long as it was invested in the European Challenge Tour. Like a true monopoly, the PGA Tour, and now its 40% owned DP World Tour strategic alliance partner, weren't happy as soon as the Saudi Arabian money went outside of their little ecosystem.
As we all know, that the Vision 2030 is not only a vision of transformation, but it's much more bigger than that. And having you, Keith Pelley, in the kingdom is...
I wonder how Jay Monahan, Keith Pelley, and the PGA Tour lawyers are going to work around this video. It's shocking that they're going to try to accuse the LIV Golf Tour of using their money to push this 2030 initiative when Keith Pelley's on stage with the managing director of LIV discussing the benefits of tourism, etc. in Saudi Arabia.
Let's talk, if we can, to Keith, because it's been a huge moment, Keith, for the European Tour and Saudi Arabia coming together. We saw in January the Saudi International.
Yes, they're discussing the European Tour's Saudi International event that occurred in 2019, and yet here we are in 2022, and the PGA Tour lawyers are saying that what's going on now is the sports washing, and in 2019, good to go.
Won so brilliantly by the American former world number one, Dustin Johnson. How did that come together? Put that into your own words, and what kind of, I suppose, springboard has that given the European Tour for future growth in the kingdom?
Sure. Well, we play in 31 different countries, and the Middle East has always been a very important part of our schedule, based on the fact that you can't play in Europe in January or in February, and if you do, it's going to be pretty cold, Ernie.
Jay Monahan is just happy that Keith Pelley hasn't said that Saudi Arabia will help grow the game. That would crush his soul if he had one.
And the reason why the Middle East is so important is the climate is terrific, the amenities are always first rate, and the golf courses are sensational.
The amenities in Dubai, Keith, are built by slave labor. Yes, just like Rory's former sponsor, Jumeirah Hotels. You can look it up.
And so when we started to talk to His Excellency and Majid, they wanted to use golf to help the transformation of the country like Dubai did.
So in 2019, it was okay to use golf to help the transformation of Saudi Arabia. But now in 2022, it's sports washing.
And as a Canadian, the thought of the race to Dubai was my first touch point with Dubai. And that will happen now with the ambition that Majed and the country has with golf. And we're excited about it because there is no question they're at the forefront of helping us develop the game.
Develop the game isn't the same, possibly, as grow the game. So we're still okay, skating on thin ice, but as long as Keith Pelley doesn't say grow the game, we're good.
It's a very important region for it. They want to do everything first class. To bring the likes of Camilla and Ernie here showcases that they're really serious about the game. And of course, the game is so much about inclusivity, and it's so much about innovation, and it's so much about globalizing. And that's what the tour is all about. It was a terrific tournament last year, but we're just in the infancy of developing a really strong relationship with the kingdom and growing golf and growing this wonderful game together.
You blew it, Keith Pelley. You said grow in the game. Subscribe, share, and like.